शन्नो भवत्वर्यमा शन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यश्छन्दसा मृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृतात् सम्बभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया आस्पृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासं शरीरं मे विचर्षणं जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरिविश्रुवं ब्रह्मणः कोशोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिव कीर्तिः पृष्ठं गिरेरिव ऊर्ध्वपवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमितमस्मि द्रविणगुंसवर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षितः इतिर्तिशङ्कोर्वेदानुवचनम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः आप्यायन्तु मम अङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुः श्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्यां मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्त्वनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनिरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्मास्ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः वाङ् मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठिताम् आविराविर्म एधि वेदस्य म आनीस्थः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेनादितेन अहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं नो अपि वातय मनः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तगुंहदेवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं Shankaram Shankaracharyan Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Narayanam Padma Bhuvam Vasishtam Shaktim Cha Tatputra Parasharam Cha Vyasam Shukam Gaudapadam Mahantam Govinda Yogindra Mathasya Shishyam Shri Shankaracharya Mathasya Padmapadam Cha Hastamalakam Cha Shishyam Tam Totakam Vartikakaramanyaan Asmat Gurun Santato Manatosmi Om Vishwam Darpanadishyamana Nagari Tulyam Nijantargatam Pashyanatmani Mayaya Bahiribodbhutam Yatha Nidraya Yat Sakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanamevadvayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaitam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Bijasyantarivankuro Jagadidam Prang Nirvikalpam Punaha Maya Kalpita Desha Kala Kalana Vaichitrya Chitri Kritam Maya Viva Vijrambhayatyapi Mahayogi Vayasvechaya Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Yasyaiva Puranam Yasyaiva Sphuranam Sadatmakam Asatkalparthakam Bhasate Sakshat Tattvamasiti Veda Vachasa Yo Bodhayatyashritan Yat Sakshat Karanad Bhavena Punaravrittirbhavambo Nidhau Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaitam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Nana Chidraghatodara Sthita Mahadeepa Prabhabhaswaram Jnanam Yasya Tu Chakshuradikarna Dwara Bahispandate Janami Titameva Bhantamanubhatye Tat Samastam Jagat Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaitam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Deham Pranam Apindriyan Apichalam Buddhim Cha Shunyam Viduhu Stri Balanda Jadaupamastvahamiti Branta Brisham Vadinaha Maya Shakti Vilasa Kalpita Maha Vyamoha Samharine Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye. So today we will attempt to finish the revision of all the 4 sutras called the Chatussutri. Important, a lot of the commentary on the Brahma Sutra stops at this point. These are the 4 important sutras. So today is the 52nd class, and I would say that these classes on Brahma Sutra were meant for the more advanced students who have already completed a fair amount of Shravanam through the various Upanishads. And I admire the patience of the newer students who may not have finished all of the Shravanam and therefore might find some of the passages and explanations to be on the dry side, but it's good that you have kept up with it, and perhaps in the future when you revise these they will begin to make even more sense to you than they do now. But certainly for the more advanced students, what this text provides is the underpinnings of a very solid foundation of understanding. And as we mentioned in the last class, this should be seen to be your own questions that have been not very well articulated by your own mind, because even the resolution of a doubt that people have. First of all, I think all the acharyas say this, and I remember this conversation that I had with Swami Dayanandji right in this home, perhaps in this house itself in 1986, because after we built this home in 1885, Swamiji used to come and stay here every year. And so I remember this one conversation that I had with him, private conversation, one-on-one. And I said, Swamiji, what is it that I really need to do to complete this whole study? And those questions were hardly even articulated when he said, oh, remove all the doubts. So the removal of doubts is really the most important thing there is, because we have a general understanding of what Atma, Anatma, Anatma, Viveka, that the Ishvara, all of those kinds of things we begin to have a certain general understanding of, and we do understand it. However, for your life to really become one where this alternative reality that we have, that I am just a limited being, beset with all the issues in my life and so on. So that alternative reality doesn't go easily until you go through the removal of every doubt one by one. And so the Brahma Sutra is meant to really accelerate and to articulate, that's the word I was looking for, to articulate your doubts. So to complete my earlier thoughts, your removal of doubt, our removal of doubts, cannot even begin until we can articulate our doubts well. So in that sense, the discussion between Purvapaksha and Siddhanta, between the doubter and the person who is removing the doubts, does us a great favor, because we have not even begun to articulate what question should I ask. And we will complete that process today. But this is an important introduction to the study of Brahma Sutras. Okay, so I hope to try to complete it today. But before we go to the final topic today itself, I will go through one thing that we didn't quite finish in the last class. So this was the discussion that was going on with the Karma Kandin. So we'll finish with this one one short discussion with the Karma Kandin. We will finish that and go on to the Vrittikara, which is the main topic that we will take up today. But in the last class, we had that discussion, you remember very well, where the pramanam of Vedas was being discussed. This, by the way, on the side, is a very important a thing that you should pause and reflect upon. Don't accept it, but certainly pause and reflect on it. And this is how the Pramanam of Vedas is to be pondered upon. Now I'll tell you why this is interesting. This is a well-known fact. We have had some personal discussions with Swami Dayanandji, but this in his biography, this is very well known. When he started with Swami Chinmayanand, and he got a good general understanding of it and so on, as I did too. So we are both very indebted to Swami Chinmayanandji for giving us the introduction. But I think there came a point where he was kind of stuck, not making any more progress that he wanted to. And he wasn't sure why. And so, as he decided, he tended to sort of leave the tutelage of Swami Chinmayanand for the time being and start to explore. And it was very, very lucky for him. I don't know how he found Swami Pranavananda of Vijayawada. And Swami Dayanandji used to tell us that what finally occurred to him, what he finally came to the conclusion with the help of Swami Pranavananda, that the Shastra is a pramanam. This is a fact that it wasn't clear to him. So what does it really mean? What it means is that any pramanam means proof. In simple terms, it means a proof, a definite proof. So, for example, very good example of the pramanam is where you saw someone. So your eyes are a pramanam. That's the proof. So if somebody were to ask you, did you see that person? And you said yes. Are you sure that you that person was there in that party? You say yes, I saw him. So what that means is that my eyes don't lie. They unless you are vague and from a distance, that's a separate point. But if you see someone, then you rely on your eyes and said, yes, hello, how are you? Good. I'd at least say hello to the person. And then if somebody asks, was that person there? You can say, yes, of course. This is called pramanam. He said, the fact that a person is none other than Brahman. And Brahman means one who is independent of time, happy. That is the person. You are that Brahman. Did you know you are that person? This can only be done through the Veda Pramanam. And so this becomes more sophisticated in the sense that you have to have Shraddha in the Pramanam. And so Swami Dayanandji, just to close that topic, finally decided that instead of my doubting it, where am I doing? He was doing independent meditation. This is what I think I made a comment to one of the newer students in one of the Zoom sessions who said, how would you recommend meditation? And I think those instances of Swami Dayanandji saying it and my own experiences and so on is that meditation can only be done when you have certain degree of understanding and clarity anyway. So if that pramanam is not understood, meditation by itself doesn't do anything. Swami Dayananda used to say that. He says that I was doing a lot of meditation and I was getting more frustrated. You do meditate for a while, it looks nice, you feel good and so on, but then you come out of it and you're the same. So then he says, what changed my life was Swami Pranavananda convincing me personally that, listen, you are a student, you come to me, can I tell you what you need to do? And I'm talking from experience, he said. It's not as though I have heard that this is what you need to do. He says, this is what works. And Swamiji said, what is it? He says, accept the Veda as a pramanam, explore how, look at all of the various statements, see the consistency on them. They have a very clear, consistent idea. This is what is called samanvaya. This is what we've been studying right now in the fourth Tattu Samanvayat. Samaya means the Tatparya Nishchaya is pakka, it's absolutely solid. This is the pramana. Anyway, I just want to give you a side commentary on that. So, this discussion that was being held with the Karma Kandin was about the Shastra as a pramanam. So, they also look upon the Shastra as a pramanam. But there's a big difference. They think that it should be Karyabodhaka Vakyas as pramanam, not the Siddhabodhaka Vakyas as pramanam. And they feel that the Siddhabodha Vakyas are just a secondary, just to prepare it for the Karyabodhaka. Everything has to be done, what is to be done. That was the discussion, remember, we saw in the last class. Now, one final point. So we look at the definition of pramanam. It said, anadigatam abaditam arthabodhaka prayojana pramanam. These were the words that were used. So, anadigatam and abaditam. Okay, so this point is about these two words. So let's concentrate on that. Anadigatam means one that cannot be done in any other way. Like you, if you wanted to see someone, you cannot see it with your ears. Only through your eyes. And the eyes are the ones that will give you the pramana. And if you want to see something, you cannot see it in any other way except for the specific instrument given by Ishvara, which are called eyes, which is a very sophisticated camera, all kinds of hardware, software given to us. Amazing creation. And so you need to have that in order for you to see. Okay? Then the second word is abaditam. Abaditam means that it cannot be negated. Once you see something, nothing else will negate it. Who you saw, you may have to be ascertained by your mind, but the fact that you saw is itself the proof. The fact that you hear something is itself the proof. It is not negated, it is not violated by any other pramanam. This is called abaditam. Okay, so this is the point that was being discussed. No, this was the pramanam that was being discussed. So now the answer by Vedantin. So it's interesting, we saw this, that the Vedantins first took the defensive viewpoint, where the Karmakandins, the Purva Mimamsaka, was scoring, trying to score goals against us. Okay, you cannot do this, it has to be, you cannot just have a Siddhavakya, it has to be this, that or the other. Then we answered all of that, that it's a special case, it's an exception. And now we went on the offensive, and so this is one of the offensives. And say, by the way, not only is Vedanta a valid pramanam, you are not. So this is the point that I think Shankara finishes the discussion with the Karmakandin. Why not? Why are you not the pramanam? Because you violate the definition of abadhitam. How? Why are you violating abadhitam? This is how. It says that the Jnana Kanda, the Vedanta, finally says that Dvaitam, duality, multiplicity, the reality of the world as we see it, goes at some point. It is not permanent. It is not self-existing. It is provisional up to a certain point, and then the Advaita negates it. So we won't go into it because I have so much to cover. I won't go into this in more depth. But to summarize, the Vedantin says, you violate abadhitam as your pramanam. Because the Advaita, with all of its explanations and so on, says the Dvaitam does not stand. If that's the case, then you violate the definition of anadigatam, abaditam, arthabodhakam, prayojanam, all of that. Abaditam, one of the legs is violated, the whole pramanam goes. So it doesn't make sense. Anyway, so this is the ending of the discussion with the Karmakandin. And now let's move on to the main topic today, which is that the Bhashyakara, after systematically going into all of the six darshanas, Sankhya, Yoga, Vaisheshika, Nayayika, Purvamimamsa, and of course the Uttaramimamsa, which is Vedanta itself. That discussion is finished. Now takes up a very important and prevalent doubt given by a person which is only known in the Bhashya as Vrittikara. There is a person who wrote a vritti, a detailed set of ideas on why here is what needs to be done. So let's now get into that. And this is a very topical thing for each one of us, because we again, this is the same thing. We cannot articulate those doubts, but if we study it and say, yes, that's my doubt. That's my doubt. And we will see it today, how that means. So, Vrittikara. So the Vrittikara says the following. He says, so he takes a middle position between Karmakandins and Jnanakandins. Purvamimamsa and Uttaramimamsa. How does he take a middle point, middle position. Unlike the Karmakandins who says there is no Brahman, there is a Jivatma which you are, and you want to go to Swargaloka and get merged with either Vishnu or Shiva. This is what you need to do. Okay? There's nothing else that you need to do. You cannot pretend that you are Ishvara now and so on. That doesn't make any sense. So, all mirrors our own understanding. This is exactly what our doubts are too. How can I be Ishvara? So Karmasandhi says, this is what I've been saying. I'm telling you. Not only do you feel that, but the entire Vedas says something has to be done. Some mantras have to be given. Yajnas have to be performed. Do something. Don't just sit there and just say, I'm Ishvara, I'm Brahman, I'm Brahman. It's sacrilegious. And so, unlike the Karmakandin, the Vrittikara says, no. I don't think that is right. We are Brahman. We are Brahman. And I agree with the Vedantins that it is Siddha Bodhaka Vakya and it makes sense. Vedas is a pramanam. What it says cannot be violated. It doesn't make casual, spurious statements. Everything that it says means something. It means what it says, so we accept it. So I don't agree with the Purva Mimamsa. But I don't agree with the Vedantins that knowledge and jnanam alone will give you moksha. That's not our experience. So then, this is the middle position. Neither here nor there, but something kind of in between. And by the way, in the Bhashya for Bhagavad Gita, at various points, Bhashyakara, Adi Shankara, takes this Purva Paksha very seriously. So this is what is called Samuchayavada, a combination of Jnanam and Upasana. So the Vrittikara says, here's what you need to do. You need to have knowledge, yes, but not knowledge alone. So you do have to do something which is called Upasana. And so it's a combination of knowledge and karma. Neither karma alone, neither knowledge alone, but a combination of this is called Samuchayavada. And so if you study the commentary on Bhagavad Gita by Adi Shankara and others also, Swami Shankarananda, I've been studying a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita these days on my spare time. By Swami Shankarananda. Swami Shankarananda is I think I've talked to you about it, is the guru for Swami Vidyaranya. Highly acclaimed person. And Swami Dayanand used to just think very highly of him. He used to think that the Vyakhya on Bhagavad Gita by Sri Shankarananda is better in the sense of reaching out than Adi Shankara's Bhashya. And I took that to heart. And so there is a very elaborate Hindi translation of Swami Shankarananda's Bhashya on Bhagavad Gita, which I have, and I've had it for 40 years, and but it's much more voluminous. I can bring it for you just to show you. It's a book maybe not quite as wide as this, and it is about 2.5-3 inches thick, with fine print. In my age, I have to sometimes really use a magnifying glass. I think I can do without it, but I would help. But anyway, there's a lot of commentary on it. He also talks a lot about this Samuchayavada that the Vrittikara Mata says. So the Vrittikara means the one who did the Vritti. His name is not given in any of the places, which is really just funny how we, in our times, we don't really keep good records. Our historical sense is very poor. And in a sense it is, what is gone, what is present is. But anyway, some connection needs to be done. Anyway, that's a side project, side idea. So, the Vrittikara says, no, you cannot just do jnanam. You have to do something also. And that is called upasana. Upasana has to be done. So now our discussion shifts over to this point that Vrittikara Mata is pointing out. So I didn't make summarized notes from this. I just highlighted some of the points from our earlier notes, so I'll rely on that. Okay, so the first thing is we have a discussion with the Vrittikara. So all of this is now a dialogue between Purvapaksha and Siddhantin. So Adi Shankara is the Siddhantin and Vrittikara is the Purvapaksha. So the Siddhantin says, wait, why are you covering new ground? Haven't we already discussed it? That in general, knowledge is not useful until you do something. We agree with that. We know it. You don't have to keep drumming that into us. However, if the problem is in ignorance about something which causes a problem, then the removal of ignorance itself removes the problem. The example is that if a person who mistakes a rope to be a snake and suffers from the consequences of that, he has fear, he takes protective measures, he looks for a stick to beat the snake with, he jumps on top of the sofa so that by any chance the snake does not come out underneath the sofa and bite him. All those kinds of things that are going on in his mind. But if it is pointed out by someone, what are you talking about? This is not a snake, this is a rope. It looks like a snake. It is kind of like, it has some bends. And you flash a flashlight on it. And then it's kind of like a foolish smile comes in. Foolish smile comes on the face of the person. He says, oh my goodness, I cannot believe it. What a mistake I made. Gone. In that case, what needs to be done to remove the fear? Do you have to do puja to the rope saying, please do not appear again to me as or I hope you are just a rope, not a snake. Is this something that needs to be done? Do you need to handle it very carefully anymore? Nothing is done. So the Siddhantan tells of Rittikaramata. Haven't we discussed all this before? That this is an exception. We also showed you that Samanvayat, all of the passages say, yes, this is that exception. The fact that in our life we have this unnecessary fear that I am limited. And it is due to ignorance, that's all. And you remove the ignorance through the pramanam, it's gone. Nothing more needs to be done. Vritikara comes back. Let me bring it closer to you so that I can follow this. Vritikara says, I know you said that. I know you said that, but I have my doubts whether our life falls under that exception. Why do you have the doubts? Because we find that people who are scholars of Vedanta are still samsaris. Are still samsaris. So something has to be done. We do accept the validity of Vedanta, that you need to be a scholar, you need to do all of that, but you need to do much more. You need to do meditation. You need to do upasana. You have to have bhakti. So this is what is called the Bhakti Marga. So you have Jnana Marga, you have Karma Marga, and you have Bhakti Marga. So Jnana Marga by itself is not sufficient. Why? Because we see it. We find people who are, and they're right. There are people who are scholars of Vedanta, but inside they are still rotten. Inside they still have fears of the samsara, they still get angry, and so on and so forth. They get diseases, all kinds of things. Doesn't help. So what do you say to that? He asks. So we say, absolutely not. All we can say is that your definition of a scholar who is still a samsari means that the person is not a jnani. His doubts have not been removed. Still working on it. Still working on it. And so, it is not the right way where you first do jnanam and then you do upasana on top of that. This is the prevailing, this is what I was saying, that what the sutra, Brahma Sutra does is to articulate the doubts that we do not clearly articulate ourselves. So this is a doubt which is very prevalent in the whole society. That first you study some books like this and understand all the words and you do chanting and so on and so forth. And then you have to do upasana. Meaning that it is, the knowledge is explored and completed, mind you, completed. Nothing more that needs to be done. You've studied Kenopanishad, you've studied Kathopanishad, Taittiriyopanishad, Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Sutra, all the Prasthanatraya, everything. Anything that needs to be studied, you've studied it. You're done. Now it is time to do meditation. This is the sequence you're telling us? So the person says, yes. That's exactly right. Why? Because the experience tells us that knowledge by itself is not enough. Now you have to do karma. So one other point, and that we'll continue with this. The point is what is called Sampradaya. So Sampradaya means, and I think you pretty much know this, I've talked about this before, I'm just revising, even saying that I'm making the revision. Sampradaya means following the teaching meticulously. Whatever method of teaching there is a certain method of teaching. There is a certain core principles that are held by the method of teaching. And to adhere to it, not to veer from it, is called Sampradaya. Samyak pradati iti Sampradaya, one which is very well stated. There are no shortcomings that you say, I don't think that's not what this Swami really meant to say. I'm going to add some of my own. No. You follow it. If you don't want to follow it, don't follow it. But if you really want to understand this, follow it. This is called Sampradaya. Okay? So, the Sampradaya that we are following. Because even in the teaching of Vedanta and so on, there are a lot of variations. And this is one of the variations. Vrittikara Mata is one of the variations. My father, just to give you an example, was never really a scholar of Vedanta. He never really studied it. He was a good man, but he was not really not a student of Vedanta. And so when I became one, and I really started to turn my life around and started to study this, he would have the same discussion with me. He would say in Hindi, अभी तो आप पढ़ ही रहे हो, पढ़ने के बाद फिर कुछ और करना पड़ेगा. That's what he used to say. That right now you are just studying. You're just studying and it's good. Good. I don't know why you're doing it, but I accept it. But after this, then you have to do a lot of other things. Our Sampradaya says, this is to understand this point is very important for us. You may not accept it at this point. As students, you are independent, you do what you want to. You may not accept it at the moment, but it is important for you to see what the Sampradaya is saying. And hopefully this will become clearer to each one of us at some point in our lives. So the Sampradaya says, no, there is nothing to be done, period. There is something to be understood. So if the Purva Paksha says, but wait a second, I have understood everything and I still have not really reached that point, so I have to do something, don't I? We say no. Then what's the issue? The issue is you have not understood yet. I have not understood yet, but I have been studying all of this, what more needs to be done? Many of you also have to, I know, I won't name some of the students, but you have expressed the same doubts that I've been studying. How many Upanishads, Vijayji, you have been teaching us this, you've been teaching us. But I now have to do something. I have to think about it in my life. Yeah, thinking about it in your life is also part of the study, yes. But it is not as though you are finished studying and now you have to do something. No. Then what? What you need to do is to study some more. Study some more? I'm already tired. There's nothing more that needs to be done. So now comes an important thing in our discussion with the Vrittikara. So before going to that point, I won't forget it. That's an important point, so I'll bring it in. Before going to that point, the Vrittikara also says another thing. Why are you saying that upasana is not important? Because Vedanta itself says that you have to do meditation. When you say nididhyasanam, isn't it meditation? So we say, yes, it is meditation. That's what I'm saying. I don't understand what the problem is. Why are you criticizing me when I'm telling you that you also saying the same thing? You've been saying Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. And Nididhyasanam comes at the end. Nididhyasanam comes at the end. And so this is what I've been saying. First you do Shravanam, then you do Mananam, and finally we use different words. Upasana means prayer to Ishvara, to think about Brahman and say, please help me, this, that or the other. And you're doing the same thing. In fact, the core of the word Nididhyasanam is Dhya. So Nidhi means your own personal understanding. Dhya means to think, to meditate. We're saying the same thing. So why are you just attacking me and saying, Vrittikara, you don't know what you're talking about, our Sampradaya is different? It is the same thing, isn't it? So we say, no, it is not the same thing. Why not? Okay, here's the situation. Our assertion that once one recognizes that I have made a terrible mistake to take myself to be just a human being, that is all that is required. When does that happen? It happens at some point where I have enough material in my mind through the pramanam to convince myself otherwise. And part of that is nididhyasanam. Part of that is nididhyasanam, not afterwards? No. So, yes, Nididhyasanam does play a part. We don't deny that. But what the Nididhyasanam does, so in that sense, if you want me to make a definite statement, I would say that Nididhyasanam is required to prepare the mind for removing all the doubts. So it doesn't come afterwards, it is very much part and parcel of the whole process. As Mananam is too. And so this idea that Shravanam is just a bunch of Upanishads that you have memorized. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yatkinchit jagatyam jagat. Tena. All of those words you've just memorized. And now you're sitting there saying, okay, now I have to... It's not how it works. Here, one thing that I recently restudied with Swami Maheshananji recently in the because I'm revising the Sri Rudram, the commentary on Sri Rudram continuously. That's my main thing that I'm doing. And as part of that, so many gems are presented. Just amazing. So I'm going to take, I've resolved that really after the Brahma Sutra is finished, I'm going to take a very advanced view of Sri Rudram. Because I think I taught this about 8 years ago based on certain things, but my own understanding is better. And so anyway, I'll do all of that. So in the discussion of Sri Rudram, and this is in very much in the line of thinking of our Tuesday night class, where the Atma Vichara, a self-inquiry, is an important part of the understanding of Vedanta. This is the topic we have been discussing on Tuesday night. And right now we're studying the strengthening of the Atma Vichara. Right? So some of you that have been attending that class will recall that. So we've been studying it. So here the word Vichara is taken up by Swami Maheshanandaji. And I think that just thinking about his explanation of the word Vichara, it becomes very relevant at this point on this discussion between Siddhanti and Purvapaksha. So let's see how. So let us at least see what Swamiji is talking about the word Vichara. So Vichara means enquiry. Exploration is called Vichara, thinking. So simple translation of the word Vichara is thinking. Swami Maheshananji would say, in Hindi he will say, "Hum ab is baat ke upar vichar karenge." In Hindi. So in Hindi, Vichara is called Vichar because in Hindi, the vowel at the end of this, I don't know how, is very strange really. How this secular language is pretty much close to what Sanskrit is, but the ending vowel is removed. So in Sanskrit, my name will be Vijaya. In Hindi, it is Vijay. So the last ya, is removed. So in Vichara also, the is removed, it says Vichar. अब हम विचार करेंगे. Now we will think. We will explore. This is what he says normally. So the word vichara. So the word vichara, he says, let us see what it means. So it stands for V plus chara. And chara is from the verb char. And the word char is also chal. So lakara and rakara are interchangeable. They substitute for each other for some grammatical construct in Sanskrit. So for example, you can say, we are walking. Hum chal rahe hain. We are going chalam. Chala means to walk. To move forward is called chalam. And the same thing is true for char. So when we say that this cow is grazing the field, it says char. Ye gaay char rahi hai. Means it is moving forward. It's eating some grass here. When this is finished, then it goes to the next section. Because it is still hungry, when it finishes that section, then it goes to the next section. It's moving forward. The prefix V to chara means visheshena chara, means very methodically and surely. So it enhances the word chara. So this is the etymology of the word vichara, right? So Swamiji says that suppose you have to go somewhere complicated. You know, you don't know, you are in a new town. These days this cell phone and GPS and so on has completely changed things. But in the old days, here's what normally would happen. I remember it so well when I first visited. In fact, not only the first visit, even the subsequent visits to the Rishikesh ashram was exactly like this. Exactly like this, what I'm going to say. What was it like? If those of you that have been there, it's on the bank of the Ganga. And you are traveling on this road from Haridwar to Rishikesh. And there are crowded bazaars and streets with all kinds of stuff, with by-lanes going on all directions. And you have the direction that we have to go to Purana Jhadi. Means the old what is jhadi? It's kind of like a small tree. So that was the place. You don't have C4, 7, 8, 9, all nothing like that. It says Purana Jhadi. So you have to ask around and saying, I remember this so well. We would go in a car, and then the taxi driver driver doesn't know. So you have to ask, where is Purana Jhadi? So somebody says, oh, here's what you do. It's about a mile more, and then you have to turn right, and you ask somebody there. And then, so you go there, and you find out, have I gone too far or not? And sometimes you may have, and the person says, oh, you've gone too far, please go back. And the second turn on the left, then go. And then you have to go through a village and you ask somebody. This is how it was done. I remember it would take us 15-20 minutes to really get to just a very short distance by asking. So, Swamiji says the word vichara means not someone who says, supposing it's a complicated journey, not a simple journey. We don't know exactly where to turn and how to get there and so on. What you have to do is to follow some steps easily, then ask someone more, internalize it, and then find the right pointers to go from one direction to the other. It just happened just recently. I told my wife the other day to go someplace, and I said, "Oh, if you take the second left, you'll see a Shell station on the right hand side, and on the corner of the Shell station there is Bay Road. You turn right." And so sometimes you cannot tell the name of a street, so you have to look for some markers. So this is a Shell station. So you say, okay, that you can tell. So this is called vichara because it's a combination of thinking, ascertaining, moving forward, thinking some more, ascertaining, removing doubts. This is the word vichara. The vichara doesn't mean that you just sit there and say, okay, Atma, and then Anadi and Swatasiddha and so on and so forth. It just means you have to really think about implications of that, because this is how our mind is held back by our own doubts. The fact that we have taken a birth as a human being as the end of so many lives, you cannot believe what a culmination it is. All the time we are just improving ourselves as a human being. It means that the doubts are so strong that for us to simply say, you're not just a limited being, you are the very Paramatma itself. Not going to be easy. So at every step of the way, we have to explore, internalize, ascertain, explore some more. This is called vichara. So now we can close the loop on this argument. This is what I wanted to tell you about the word vichara. What it means is nididhyasanam is part of that whole process. Not just once you've finished all of this Shravanam and Mananam, you set that aside and now you're just taking a portion of it and just doing in the morning just meditation. Yes, you have to do that. But you have to do that again and again. And you have to re-examine what was being said. Have I understood it? Why is it that I'm not understanding it? Why is it? And finally, at the end of that, you have a clearer picture. And which means that I am not a karta and I am not a bhokta. It is the antaryami working through me. You see the presence of Ishvara working through you. You as being you. It is all that ascertained knowledge. There is nothing to be done after that. So if you want to say something to be done, that is vichara, which is a very specialized form of exploration and thinking. It's all thinking. Mind is the one that has to be really convinced. And so, really speaking, we differ with the Vrittikara. This is the Sampradaya that we should be very clear about. That it is not as though Upasana is an essential part of it. And so then we go through many logical arguments to support this viewpoint. But I wanted to give you the overall picture of the main discussion between the Siddhantin and the Purva Pakshi. And furthermore, this is pointed out that this kind of an upasana is criticized in Vedanta, where so the upasana means you are just asking for some blessing from Ishvara. And the most important blessing of the Ishvara that you should be getting is the ability to resolve your doubts. Because it's a fact. Well, I don't accept that fact. It's a Siddha Bodhaka Vakya. Tattvamasi is a fact. It has nothing to be done. It doesn't mean that you will be. See, this is the other important thing about this, is that this is as an adjunct to this, and I'm just going to close this today. Well, I don't know. Maybe there is a little bit more that discussion that goes, but in my view, none of that is as important as the summary of these kinds of things that we were talking about. Anyway, we'll see. I still have 5-7 minutes. So, this is what is called Bhavasagara. To the word Bhavasagara means the ocean of becoming. In that Tulsidas Bhajan, he says, Bhavasagara sab sukh gaya hai. That the ocean of becoming is now dried up. I'm not swimming in it anymore. What does it mean? So this is an important thing for us to see. So the Bhavasagara is the tendency in each one of us, no exception, as we start our exploration, is the tendency to become something. So, bhava, the word bhava means bhu. Bhu sattayam. It is the truth, but it is taken to be the truth not yet realized, but to be done. So the Bhavasagara means the tendency in our life which has two parts to it, by the way. Very interesting. Two sides of the same coin. One side is, I am not done yet, but if I do something, I will become that. I hope to become that. This is the tendency which is there in us at the background of our entire life. You may not consciously say that, but that is the backdrop that really governs everything that I am and I do. I am not okay, but I may be okay. I will be okay. And Vedanta says this tendency and this premise on which you are basing your life is wrong. If that premise was correct, then upasana would make sense. But this premise is not correct. Then what? What is the premise? You are already okay. Period. You are already okay. In fact, this is an interesting thing in the next class on the Kaivalya Upanishad. This will be explored in a bit more detail about what is meant by present, past and the future, and what is the nature of present. So the nature of presence or present is I am already okay. Yeah, but I don't feel okay. So my tendency is still there, as you mentioned earlier. Exactly. The fact of the matter is you are already okay. You always have been okay. You always will be okay. The okayness is your nature. Not something, it's not a quality. So the word Brahman, which means big, is not a quality. It's not an adjective, it's a noun. Because, we saw that the word big can be a quality. You can say big mountain, big rat. So the big becomes a quality. But here, Brahman is not a quality, it is the noun itself. The big. The big what? The big. It's the present. You are already okay. Infinitely okay. Timelessly okay. Yeah, but I don't see it. Exactly. See it. How? You're not going to just meditate on it, because if you don't understand it, yes, meditation is all part of it. But you have to do vichara. So that is the contention of the discussion between Siddhanti and Purva Paksha as far as the Vrittikara Mata goes. And with that, the fourth sutra is over. There's some other parts to it which I think could be done, but I have a feeling I want to just now wrap it up. So what I would say is that with this class, all of the revision of the 4 sutras is now complete, and I'm now going to give you introduction to the structure of the rest of the 551 sutras and take up a few of them as an example. So I'll have to decide how many classes that I would have and so on. And so I think that the revision of the 4th sutra is complete, and now we will go into the introduction to the rest of the Brahma Sutra. So with that, let me just say a prayer, then we will end the class. Om Rahu Grasta Divankarendu Sadrisho Maya Samachadinat Sanmatra Karanopasamharnato Yobhut Sushuptaf Puman Pragaswap Samiti Prabodha Samaye Yaf Pratyabhigyayate Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Balyadishu api jagradadishu tatha सर्वास्वस्थास्वपि व्यावृत्तास्वनुवर्तमानमहमित्यन्तस्फुरन्तं सदा स्वात्मानं प्रकटीकरोति भजतां यो मुद्रया भद्रया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये विश्वं पश्यति कार्यकारणतया स्वस्वामिसम्बन्धतः शिष्याचार्यतया तथैव पितृपुत्राद्यात्मना भेदतः स्वप्ने जागृति वा य एष पुरुषो मायापरिभ्रामितः तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये भूरम्भांस्यनलो निलो अम्बरमहर्नार्थो हिमांशुः पुमान् इत्याभाति चराचरात्मकमिदं यस्यैव मूर्त्यष्टकम् नान्यत्किञ्चन विद्यते विमृशतां यस्मात् परस्मात् विभोः तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये सर्वात्मत्वमिति स्फुटीकृतमिदं यस्मादमुष्मिंस्तवे तेनास्य श्रवणात् तदर्थमननात् ध्यानात् च संकीर्तनात् सर्वात्मत्वमहाविभूतिसहितं स्यादीश्वरत्वं स्वतः सिद्ध्येत् तत्पुनरष्टधा परिणतं चैश्वर्यमव्याहतम् अशुभानि निराचष्टे तनोति शुभसन्ततिं स्मृतिमात्रेण यत्पुंसां ब्रह्मतन्मङ्गलं परम् अतिकल्याणरूपत्वात् नित्यकल्याणसंश्रयात् स्मर्तॄणां वरदत्वात् च ब्रह्मतन्मङ्गलं विदुः ओङ्कारश्चाथ शब्दश्च द्वावेतौ ब्रह्मणः पुरा कण्ठं भित्त्वा विनिर्यातौ तस्मान्माङ्गलिकौ उभौ ओमथ 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 असतो मा सत्कमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ So, Chala, that's interesting. I didn't know that he's taking the Shankaran and the Gita. So I'm not sure whether this is a Shankarananda's commentary on the Gita, or is it some different text called Shankarananda Gita? I think it's the first one, but I just want to be sure whether that is the case. So is he taking the Samskrita comment Vyakhya, anything other than Adi Shankara's is not called Bhashya, so it would be called Vyakhya. So is he taking the Sanskrit Vyakhya on the Bhagavad Gita? So that'd be interesting. Yeah. So Surendra, pardon me. Does that mean that chapter 6 Dhyana Yoga of the Gita has to be de-emphasized? It is pre to Vichara? No, nothing needs to be de-emphasized. It is pre to Vichara. How do you say it is pre to Vichara? Because the Vichara has been done in the first five chapters. The Bhagavad Gita is a very good example of Vichara. Beautiful example. And that means that Bhagavad Gita cycles through karma upasana jnanam. It just cycles through completely. And this has to be done over and over again for it to really sink in. So yeah, there are certain chapters that emphasize Nididhyasanam, and number 6 is that, but it follows a lot of the discussion on what the jnanam is, which is in the very beginning of the 2nd chapter, and then followed by the discussion on karma yoga and so on. Then it is done on meditation. And then in the 7th chapter, Ishvara is brought in more clearly and more assertively. And then the dhyanam of Ishvara towards the end would also be taken up again. And so that's a beautiful vichara, because it is not just straight studying from one to the other. You have to keep on revising it, reinforcing it, clarifying it. All of that has to be done. So no, not to be de-emphasized at all. Okay, so I'll go back to, before I go to Ashish's, Chawla says that he's taking in Gujarati. Yes, he's doing Sanskrit Vach. Interesting. Good. Wow. So Ashish, please suggest some sentences or short text pre-recorded audio commentary that one could play in the background while meditating. I am not quite sure how helpful that would be, and I'm not quite sure this is what we are recommending anyway. So I don't know if I would even do it. I think there are meditative sentences in the Shastra all over the place. So even in the Kaivalya Upanishad that we are currently doing, let me grab that copy of that. So you can let's just take an example. This is what we were doing. So in the verse number 5 of the Kaivalya Upanishad, it talks about how best to sit and meditate. Then in the meditation starts in verse number 6 and 7. Hrit pundarikam virajam vishuddham vichintya madhye vishadam vishokam, etc. So these are the passages that we can do. The best thing would be to take certain meditative passages like the one that I just mentioned, and this is there in all of the other Upanishads. Excuse me. And I'll be happy to suggest some more to you. But to take those and to make an attempt to understand the meaning of those words in the meditation. And then use those words in your meditation. Virajam Vishokam. How am I Virajam Vishokam? Anadi Rupam, etc. So you can, I think that is the best way to do that. So please, I'll be happy to suggest some, but I think you should be able to know which are the meditative verses throughout the Upanishads. Study them first. You cannot meditate and just do the words without the meaning. That won't really be as nearly as effective. So study those words and sentences thoroughly. And then once the meaning of that is clear, to bring to your mind while you're meditating is really what needs to be done. So Chola Joshi's suggestion that yes, there are meditation, you can actually, so actually if you do the conducted meditations from any of the Swamis, then you can just follow that. So I think that is a good suggestion. You can go through the audio of. There's also a book that Swami Tattvavidananda ji has just done, which is Nididhyasanam on Kathopanishad. So he has just written a book that Raj will also have a copy of that from our bookstore. Or if you want to go to, there are special meditation sessions from Swami Dayanand ji and Swami Viditatmananda ji. So you can do that. So yeah, all those are good. But I'm just giving you a general idea that the most effective form would be to take certain meditative passages and then understand them and then bring it up to your mind yourself. And that will be the most effective way. Anyway, good points. So with that, I close the class, and we will start with an introduction to the rest of the Brahma Sutras from the next class onwards. Okay? All right. Hari Om.